Thanks for having me.
Super. So the mic is working.
Yes.
So you define yourself as a biodiversity enthusiast.
Yes.
Why so?
Why is biodiversity important? Well, biodiversity is life. It is us. It's our life. And I'm very worried because, well, let me ask you a question. You were asking a question. Let me start with another one. How many species do we have on this earth? Who knows that? I don't see one hand up. Okay. Well, the truth is, we don't know and nobody knows. We have given 2 million species a name, but there might be billions out there. We have absolutely no clue how many, and most importantly, we don't know what their role is for the ecosystems. Which means if we kill one species after the other, if we make them go extinct, this is like flying blind. It's like deleting all the data randomly that you can find on your computer without having any clue what that will mean. And we've already lost 70% of the population of all wildlife, and in some cases, insects, for instance, way more, so 95% of certain species. And I wonder, is it 99%, or when are we going to act?
Thank you, Stefanie. So as you can see, I think that you are fully conscious about the challenges ahead of us. Have you always been like that? Did you have a tipping point? What's your journey?
Well, my journey actually started back in 1992. Maybe some of you can remember that was when the Rio Summit, the Earth Summit was, and I was supposed to write a paper on the deforestation in Brazil. So we can all say that back then we knew already about forests and biodiversity. And that's when I started to think about, what can I do? And I ended up in the media industry because I thought educating people would be the right thing to do, and then they would understand how valuable this planet is and what to do. Fast forward, in 2020, early 2020, I was running the biggest magazine publisher in the world, and I had a team in Australia, and they sent a message just saying, we cannot make it into the offices because our continent is on fire. If you remember, that was the worst, those were the bushfires, the worst bushfires in the history of this planet. And that's when I said to myself, I might be doing the things right, but I'm not doing the right things. So I totally, I quit the media industry, and I dedicated myself to the question, how can we run companies without killing our planet?
Thank you. Very impressive engagements. And in this journey, has COP15 changed anything for you?
Well, so far it hasn't changed anything. It's up to us to make that change. It's just words. But the words are already very inspiring, because what they tell us to do is to rethink the business world and to understand that this is not about becoming a little less bad. That's not enough. It's about restoration. It's about being good, actually. I mean, just one example. If you're a student together with friends and you have an apartment, would you make a mess in the kitchen and just leave it that way, or would you clean it up again? And COP15 for me is about cleaning up, about undoing the harm or reducing the harm as well, but mainly about the idea that it's not enough to hope to have the ambition to be the best company in the world, but the best company for the world. And that will only be possible with nature restoration. Reducing emissions will not be enough, and we have to do something with the biodiversity problem, definitely. So we should not always be talking about emissions, but focus actually on biodiversity, because everything we do for the biodiversity situation is always also good for the climate and the water situation.
And a lot of times when we were preparing the session, you told me that it's not about really changing the way we see it. Is not about financing the change, but changing the way finance is operating. Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, well, I don't have a financial background, not at all. But I had to learn about it because I think it's going to save our lives. As I said, I was in the media industry for 20 years, and I had to learn the hard way that people just don't want to know. They want to know about Kim Kardashian and her new boyfriend, but if I tell them that we're running out of soil, they just don't care. I saw the data, and it was really heartbreaking. So I figured there must be some other language that people understand. And my conclusion is there's only one language, and that is money. So let's put a price tag on the ecosystem services, make people pay if they harm nature, make people get an award if they do something good for themselves, for nature, for everyone here. That must be the system. So I have been thinking about that a lot.
So tell us a little more about your action at NatureRe. What are you doing?
Well, now I am privileged to be working with wonderful people. I see Daniel, I see Marie-Sophie, lots of others, Sven, hello. So what we do is, this is a NatureRe Capital, that's it called. It's a new company, but we as people, we've been around for a long time, and we have made our conclusions about biodiversity. And we were wondering, how can we get together corporates and the financial industry and nature? What do we have to do to get there? And to have a win-win-win situation for everyone, so that it's even fun for everyone. And NatureRe Capital is an asset manager, so we raise money from institutions, from private people, you, if you want. And with that money, we buy land. I want to stress that because we really believe you have to own land, you have to protect it from everybody else. It must be your land forever, have the permanence. And we buy land which is depleted. We buy that land not anywhere, but if you look at the planet as a whole, you want to start in Colombia. This is where we're starting. Why Colombia? Because Colombia has the fastest growth rate of the trees, and Colombia has the highest intensity of biodiversity in the world. So if you only say 500,000, you want to invest them there because you get the biggest impact for nature as a whole. And the land plots that we buy were depleted due to cattle farming, for instance, but not entirely. Like 20 or 30% are still intact. And we see millions and millions of hectares of land alone in Colombia that are like this. They are idle. If we don't do anything about it, they will just stay that way. But if we do something which we call assisted natural regeneration, we help nature to restore itself. That is the point. So we just take away, say, invasive grasses, or the cattle, of course, or chemicals, or fences, and then we leave nature to itself, because this process has been around for 4 billion years. It works very well. It takes only a couple of years, maybe 3 or 4 years. I've been there. It's just amazing to see how it grows back. And what you have then is an ecosystem service that you can have monetized, because we now have the market for carbon credits. And so we have corporates out there. Some of you represent corporates that are now beginning to understand it's not just enough to reduce emissions. We're not fast enough. We're not getting there. But they contribute. They buy offsetting. And so we take the money from the investors. We give it to nature, so to speak. Nature does the job itself and produces carbon credits for the market, which is working right now and which is of high integrity. And so the corporates can contribute, and the investors make a very nice return on their investment. So
Thank you, Stefanie.
It's like a methodology that is also easy to scale because we don't work that much on it. It's not very individual. You can have it at large scale and make
virtuous model
and restore nature. That's what we need right now.
Inspiring, thank you. And speaking about corporates, I would love to hear your perspective about which are the corporate that do inspire you in the journey. Maybe they don't have it all right already, but who is on the way, where to look at. You know, we have participants in this room that really are change makers, are eager to make the shift happen. So anything that would help them in this journey that you could share?
Oh, lots of them. I'm really happy to see how they get involved. Let me give you a couple of examples. We're in Paris, so I might mention L'Oréal. L'Oréal is a company, they don't do everything right, but they have worked out a methodology where you consider all the 9 planetary boundaries. So not just climate, not just water, but all of them. I think this is the way to go. And then L'Oréal, to give you a number, they reach out to 4 billion consumers. So with their products, with their commercials, they can really change the world. I mean, that's bigger than any media company in the world. They can really educate people about what to do. Then Siemens Energy, you know Siemens maybe? They are into energy and they have a footprint which is double the amount of the German footprint, the German emissions, if they look at scope 3. So this is, corporate is much more important, a corporate like that, than an individual smaller country, say. Or I was just talking to Bayer. Bayer is the crop science leader in the world. 1/3 of all the seeds come from this particular company. So if they change the way they create those seeds with genome editing, they can make them more climate resilient. They really have a big impact. And let me give you one last quote, which I loved so much. It's from Microsoft. Microsoft is very ambitious, not too ambitious. It's just as ambitious as you need to be in this world, because they say they're going to offset or capture from the atmosphere all the emissions they have caused since they were founded back in 1975. And I was talking to this executive of Microsoft, and I said, whoa, I mean, that's quite a commitment. And he said, you know what? We changed the world once. We can change it again.
Very ambitious. Maybe before we go into what does it really take as a leader, because I believe it's all about leadership, and there is no strategy without conviction. That is why we are so eager and so happy to be here together at ChangeNOW, because it's about gathering and joining forces as change makers. What are the obstacles really corporate do face along the way to make the shift happen? Because it brings so much hope when we listen to you on those examples. So what are the obstacles to really unlock this change?
I've thought about this for such a long time. I don't know why people, I mean, we know we must change. We know we can change. There are so many examples. But will we change? I don't see enough change, but I always tell myself, you know, hope is not the conviction that something is going to end well, but the certainty that it makes sense to do it, no matter how it ends. And so we all have to do our best, you know?
This is so true. You know, I always, and this is really my strong conviction, is that I have 5 kids. And I want to say that in 10 years from now, I will be able to look into their eyes and say that I've done everything I could at the time that it really matters.
Yes. And we're not just talking about the next generation, so this will be also our generation's thing. And we're the first generation ever that really understands the emergency, and we're the last generation, in fact, that can do something about it. So please.
So what does it really take as a leader? You have many leaders in the room, wherever they are in the world. You know, we have together today 120 countries that are gathering from around the world with very different roles, you know, in businesses, in NGOs, in academics. What does it take really as a leader to make the shift happen and to move the needle? What do you believe in?
It's the question, what do you feel responsible for? Do I feel responsible for my P&L, or for the building that I'm sitting in, or the entire supply chain? Where does the stuff come from? Actually, we now have some regulation for that, the ban on deforestation, for instance. And then, in the end, the question, where does it go? So go circular as much as you can, and feel inspired by the idea that for the first time, you know, it's not about being less bad, as I said, but how can you leave something behind? I mean, is that too much to ask for, that we go from this world sooner or later and not leave a trail of destruction, but something wonderful? And so you would have to go through the entire supply chain and ask yourself, how can I reduce, of course, the harm, but at the same time do something good? And that's why I believe so much that every individual and every corporate, from now on, this is COP15's expression actually, must become nature positive and must restore and not just hope for the best, so actively restore. I know there are companies that do that, like Chanel or Danone. They are starting to do it, but of course it's not enough. And maybe it's all about ambition. So why are we here? What do you want to be, as you said? Can you answer your children's questions in the end?
Thank you so much, Stefanie. I think it's an invitation for every one of us to join this journey of nature positive. Thank you so much, Stefanie.
Okay, let's do it. Ciao.